Hello, everybody. Welcome to Chat of the Wild DX. In this season, we are playing through The Legend of Zelda for the Nintendo Entertainment System. If you didn't check out a previous episode, I would very much recommend it to get proper introductions for Celeste and Pete joining me for this season. Welcome, Celeste and Pete.
Hey, thanks for having us. I'm excited.
Of course.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Now, listeners, we're back. It has been just about 2 years since I put out the little short episode announcing the departure of Chat of the Wild. But since then, I will just say it was nice for me to be able to play Zelda games at my own pace. But I miss talking to people about Zelda because I just love Zelda so much. And this year marks the 40th anniversary of the Legend of Zelda series. So what a better time to go back and revisit that. Now, I had said before, we are going to play the first 3 dungeons. So we are also using the ZeldaDungeon.net guide. That has always been my sort of go-to on this, of formatting to figure out, okay, this is where we should be going in that order. So feel free to look into that while we were talking about this. But for those that don't know, Chat of the Wild is a play-along podcast. We are going to go through each dungeon and all the different things that lead up to the dungeon and talk about it and play along with us. It's a lot of fun. And I'm so excited to have Celeste and Pete coming along with us on this journey. So those that don't know, Legend of Zelda is the first in the series, and it launched with the Famicom Disk System in Japan in 1986. Now, some people might not be familiar with that as well. The Famicom was the original Nintendo in Japan, and it was almost 2 years, like a little over a year later, that they announced a additional add-on to it. If you're familiar with Nintendo stuff, they have always tried to do little addition things to their systems just to prolong their life. And what they did with that was the Famicom Disk System, and it created these little floppy disks that I've got one right here. So we've got this right here. This is the Legend of Zelda for that. The Hyrule Fantasy is the Legend of Zelda Hyrule Fantasy is the full name. So this isn't yellow because of Zelda. All of them look like this. And you would pop this in, and this was a little different than what we got in the US, because about a year later, over in the West for the Nintendo, the NES, we've got the fancy gold system here. So this one had some things that were changed in it to be able to fit it into this cartridge that you had on this that was a little different. But yeah, we could talk about those differences. It's mostly in sound. So what if you go and listen to it, that if you have actually the Zelda Game & Watch, you can actually play the Japanese version and the English version. It's very interesting because the Famicom just has like almost like a couple extra instruments in it. And then as you're playing the game, there's a little bit of differences there too. Like when you shoot your sword, it just sounds a little different. And it's like I played a little bit of this in the Japanese version, and it was weird to me. And so I was like, you know what, it's fine. Like I could play this game without actually needing to read everything, because for the most part, it's go here, do this, and it shows a number of this is what the rupees are to buy the thing, yada yada yada. But as we boot up this game, we were greeted with the intro. Many years ago, Prince Darkness Ganon stole one of the Triforce with power. Princess Zelda had one of the Triforce Princess Zelda had one of the Triforce. This isn't working.
Well, it's not like proper.
It's
English
not proper
either,
English.
so it throws you off.
Yeah. Okay, let's try this one more time. Many years ago, Prince Darkness Ganon stole one of the Triforce with power. Princess Zelda had one of the Triforce with wisdom. She divided it into 8 units to hide it from Ganon before she was captured. Go find the 8 units, Link. or whatever name you put in here, to save her. So that's sort of the intro that we get on there. If you read the booklet gives you quite a bit more information of the backstory. Did either of you look into this?
No, but I wish that I had something physical with me as I was playing it. I'm so curious about what that experience was for people.
Yeah, so the booklet is interesting because it actually tells you almost everything about it. Like story-wise, you actually get the full story beginning to end. Like if you read it, it will give you the synopsis of like what you're doing all the way to congratulations for defeating Ganon. Like the the land is saved. Um, but let's see. So we have a long, long time ago, the world was in the midst of this chaos in a little kingdom of the land of Hyrule. A legend was being handed down from generation to generation. The legend of the Triforce, golden triangles possessing mystical powers. One day, an evil army attacked this peaceful little kingdom and stole the Triforce of power. The army was led by Ganon, the powerful prince of darkness, who sought to plunge the world into fear and darkness under his rule. Fearing his wicked rule, Zelda, the princess of this kingdom, split up the Triforce of Wisdom into 8 fragments and hid them throughout the realm to save the last remaining Triforce from the clutches of the evil Ganon. At the same time, she commanded her most trustworthy nursemaid, Impa, to secretly escape into the land and go find a man with enough courage to destroy the evil Ganon. Upon hearing this, Ganon grew angry, imprisoned the princess, and sent out a party search for Impa. Braving forest and mountains, Impa fled for her life from the pursuers. As she reached the very limit of her energy, she found herself surrounded by Ganon's evil henchmen. Cornered, what could she do? But wait! All was not lost. A young lad appeared. He skillfully drove off Ganon's henchmen and saved Impa from a fate worse than death. His name was Link. During his travels, he had come across Impa and Ganon's henchmen. Impa told Link the whole story of the princess, Zelda, and the evil Ganon. I'm surprised he didn't know about this. Maybe he's just living in the forest the whole time, so he wasn't paying attention. Burning with a sense of justice, Link resolved to save Zelda, but Ganon was a powerful opponent. He held the Triforce of Power, and so, in order to fight off Ganon, Link had to bring the scattered 8 fragments of the Triforce of Wisdom together to rebuild the mystical triangle. If he couldn't do this, there would be no chance Link could fight his way into Death Mountain where Ganon lived. Can Link really destroy Ganon and save Princess Zelda? Only your skill can answer that question. Good luck. Use the Triforce wisely.
Can I just say I am highly amused because I'm picturing like modern day, you're at the grocery store and you come across this elderly woman and she's telling you this story and you have to stop all your plans.
Yeah.
And you're going on this
That'll
quest.
be us in a few decades. We'll stop people in the grocery store and say and start to recall the tale.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that's great because this is how these games were back in the day. They didn't really they weren't able to do a lot of fanfare. Like something like a Final Fantasy was a little different, where they were able to put a little bit more text in there where you're reading that. But this one, that you get straight into the action, so that's great.
One of the things that has struck me the most, just in the short time that I've already had with Legend of Zelda, is how awesome it is that so many things have stood the test of time from this intro, like Death Mountain, Ganon, like all the Dodongo. I was so surprised to see Octoroks and all these other staples of the series started at the very beginning.
Right.
That's really impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So Pete, you had said before in the previous episode that the only thing you were really familiar with this game is one other than, like, if you saw screenshots, you'd be like, oh, that's the NES Zelda, right? Was the cave. As soon as we start, you have nothing, and there is just one little cave. Now you could go in any direction, but if you did, you're going to get your butt kicked.
Right.
So you go into the cave, you get a sword here, and so for you, did you immediately go into there? Do you remember to do that, or did you wander a bit?
Yes, fortunately, yeah. That cave really catches your eyes, so I wandered right in there, and immediately I was like, "Oh, okay, this is the one thing that I've seen from this game is this man offering you a sword, knowing how dangerous your journey is about to be."
Right, right,
Um, so yeah, I managed to do that, and then I spent the next hour absolutely clueless.
right. I had said this off air, but when I was talking to Celeste and Pete beforehand about like planning everything out, I mentioned oh, we got the first 3 dungeons. It should only take like an hour. And for me, it only took like an hour. Now, Pete streamed all of that stuff, and that took about 3 hours. Celeste, how long did it take you to basically get this chunk done?
Oh, well, I did the gathering part as well,
Hmm.
where you
Mm.
gather all as many items as you can. And I'll get to that later. But I maybe 2 hours, and I was also following the ZeldaDungeon.net guide as well, and I died a few times, and
Yeah,
I had to do
absolutely.
the replay on the Nintendo Switch Online, which I am thankful for that.
Right.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I know, Pete, you're also using your save states. Now I'm trying to
Mm.
make a point now, not to, in the past when I've been playing a lot of these games, because I've played these Zelda games many times, I usually try to go in like the Master Quest mode. I try to do the one that's a little bit harder. The challenge I'm giving myself this time is I'm not going to do any rewinds. If I die, I die. So that is the only challenge I'm giving myself. I'm still using guides. We would have had guides back then anyway. This is just how I'm playing. I'm not saying this in any way that this is the right way to play. I just like to go into these games to be like, you know what, this is the challenge I'm going to give myself, in that I want to play this as I would be playing it back in the original Nintendo. I don't have the NES controller for Switch, but I do have the Super Nintendo one, so I'm using that to try to get a little bit more natural Nintendo feel with it as I'm playing it. So that's how I'm going about this. Now, Celeste, you said you did all the gathering phase and all that stuff. So did you gather a bunch of hearts before you went into the first dungeon as well?
Yes, and I did. I got a lot of hearts, and I wanted to get the items to help me. And I like how Zelda Dungeon calls it the Gathering.
Hmm.
I was like expecting, oh, am I assembling like the champions or something like you do in Breath of the Wild? But I did not have enough rupees for some of the items, like the blue ring. Which, Pete and Jeremy, did you guys get the blue ring?
I got it
Mhm.
later, but I don't. It was fine. I was fine.
Yeah, it was. I was mad at myself because I didn't have enough money to buy it. But I was like, well, I'll just figure it out. I'll come back to this later. But that is a huge help if you can go and gather all of these items. I'm looking at my notes and the guide, and it makes for me it made a big difference because I knew this was going to be a challenge. It's not, you can't climb on walls or climb on things like Link can in the modern Zeldas, and it's, you have to be very deliberate. That's the word that kept
Hmm.
coming into my mind with this game, and even a few more games after this one. You have to be very deliberate in your actions. It forces you to take your time, I
Right.
find.
Yeah. One thing that I was curious about, it was I followed the same guide that you followed, Celeste, and of course it tells you where to burn a handful of bushes and where to bomb a handful of walls. Did you know about that during your first playthroughs? Did the guide that came with the game tell you where those were, or were those just a complete trial by error, finding out which ones worked?
The guide does tell you that there are many secrets to find, and
Oh,
if I
okay.
believe the description for like the bombs, I can bring it up here.
I can imagine that back then that was part of the experience of saying, "Yeah, I burned this going to school and saying, "Yeah, I burned this bush," and your friends are like, "No way! It gave you 100 rupees inside that bush. There's no way."
Oh,
Yes.
oh man. Schoolyard video game rumors. Oh my goodness. So much fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in the guide, there are little hints along the bottom. Now, for the candles, it does just say that the rooms are dark and you can use them to light up the rooms. So it doesn't
Mm.
actually tell you that you can use it for that there. But let's see. So no, there's probably some hints on here somewhere about things to look at because there's a lot in here. Um, that it is a proper guide for this booklet, right? It's not just here's how you move. Later on, more complicated games, the booklets would just tell you what the buttons do and how to do certain moves, and that's really it. This one gives you a lot of hints in that. Now, you did, as you were asking, you did have to just trial and error, especially with the candle, because the candle, you can only use it once per screen. So if you see
Right.
a bunch of bushes in the screen, you can go up to a couple, try to light that one on fire, and if it didn't do it, exit the screen, come back, try the other. So yes, it
Yeah.
is a lot of trial and error, but that's where a lot of companies that made guidebooks brought in a lot of money for sure. The one thing that I did mention, so as we were doing this, I was also listening to the original season, and I gave myself a hint that I used again here, and that's in the first dungeon. I would advise not collecting any hearts before you go into the first dungeon because when you die, you get 3 hearts back when you start up again, and so that will automatically give you the powered up sword. So, in my experience, and my suggestion would be, do it with just the 3 hearts, because eventually you'll unlock all the stuff to get to the boss very quickly. And then if you die, you have 3 hearts anyway. You're automatically powered up, and you can get through stuff pretty quickly. At least in my experience. So that is all I would say for the first dungeon. Don't do the gathering after you complete the first dungeon. But
Okay.
yeah, or you could have a whole bunch of hearts, but if you take one hit, even if you have a bunch of hearts, you don't have the power up sword.
Yeah. I
So
was getting my butt kicked before I got an extra heart piece. I just left and right. I was dying, and that's really when I started using save states of like I just could not get past some of these. I mean, the enemy design really took me by surprise because they almost seem to anticipate your movement in a way. Like sometimes I'll pivot to one direction, and it's like they knew that I was going to go in that direction, and I run straight into them. So yeah, that's an interesting point. That would be a challenge for me, I think. But it would be a kind of a fun one to see if I could accomplish it.
It kind of reminds me, have either of you played any Resident Evil games?
mhm.
Yes, love Resident Evil.
Yeah. So my first one was Resident Evil 2 on the N64, and it has these cheat codes where you can get infinite ammo and infinite health, which
Mhm.
is how I like to play it because I like to play games for the story and the exploration and the experience. If there's an emergency going on, I don't care. I'm reading that note. You better hold on, emergency. Which is why I kind of struggle with the Mr. X and the remake of it because it's like, no, stop following me around. But I just want to read things. But it kind of like if you're playing the game Resident Evil games, for example, the way they're intended to be played, where you don't necessarily kill every zombie or every enemy, you
Mhm.
evade them. I kind of joke that I'm like that Danny DeVito meme. I think it's from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Anyway, I just started blasting where I just go in,
Yes.
I get them out of the way so I can explore. You're in my way. You're like a little fly. But this game, like you're saying, Pete, you have, especially when there are a bunch of enemies in one square, you have to kind of strategize. How do I get out of here? I just want to get to the next block. I want to get to the next scene.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I tend to be a little bit of an impatient gamer where I enter a screen and I'm like I'm gonna fly, try to fly as fast as possible through this screen without taking any damage, and that never worked.
No.
Every time they would get me with something.
Yeah. So let's talk about the first dungeon. So this is the let's just say it's the Great Deku Tree, right? It's a big tree with its a dead tree with its mouth open. You walk in very much like the Ocarina Great Deku Tree, but this is just level 1 is all they call that. Now later on, I don't actually know if anything official was with this or if this is what just fans would call it, the Eagle, but the game itself just says level 1 when you enter this. Now, what's interesting here is you get 2 items in this one. One is very obvious of like you go into a certain space and there it is sitting there for you to pick up, and that is the bow, which you just get the bow. You have to go and buy the arrows later, which is always interesting. It's a thing that I forget about. But you also get the boomerang in this dungeon, and you get it just by killing some enemies. So I guess it's maybe like a mid-boss drop kind of thing when you're dealing with that. But for me personally, the boomerang is my go-to in this game and in a few other Zelda games. Just being able to stun the enemies is great. But did either of you have any trouble with this dungeon?
I don't think so. I just like I followed the guide. I'm looking at it now. I also was mystified by how it's referred to as the eagle, which when you look at the shape of the dungeon, you can kind of tell, oh, the overview is it looks like an eagle.
Yeah.
The I have to say my favorite part is the room right before you meet the final boss, because something I don't think I've experienced in other Zelda games before is you can hear
Mm-hmm.
Aquamentus roaring. And I can only imagine. I mean, that blew me away. I loved that effect. But imagine playing this game in 1986.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, what is on the, you have no idea. What is going on? Where's that sound coming from?
Right.
Yeah.
We didn't have surround sound either, so you couldn't tell like where it was coming from, but you walk into the room and you just hear like a roar and you're like, there's no other monsters in here. Like you could potentially be like, is there an invisible monster in here that I don't know about? But yeah, no, it's very cool. It's just a great little addition that they put into here. Just so much little care that they have in this game. That's fantastic. Pete, what about you?
I did not have trouble with this one. I think I actually did these dungeons in kind of a wonky order. So I ended up doing dungeon 2 first and then moving to 1. So one felt by comparison, a lot easier. I loved that this dungeon really made me feel that this game has such a classic knight goes to save the princess and defeats a dragon. Just seeing that green dragon in there. I don't think I had any challenge with it, but yeah.
Nice. Yeah, so we get into here, into the boss room, and then we have to deal with Aquamentus, who, if you go into here, as I said, if you have your 3 hearts and you can shoot your sword, it's pretty easy to do. Now, did either of you have another tactic that you needed to use against them?
I don't think so. I think I was highly amused by his sprite, though, because his illustration, he looks pretty terrifying. And then he looks like he has a little buck tooth in the sprite and like a unicorn.
Sure.
It's a little goofy.
It looks like it would be a like a PBS kids show dragon.
Yes. Like I'm telling the story, and this is how we're going to illustrate the story on the screen for the audience. It's oh yeah, he wasn't bad. You just have to watch the little fireballs, and then you can slash at him. I don't remember if I had full health, but he wasn't that difficult. And it says you can also use bombs. Have you guys? But I'm pretty conservative with the bombs in this.
Yes, game. Yeah. It is nice that you can just get them through drops, but yeah, the fact that you can only hold like 8 is one where I'm like, I'm going to be very decisive about where I use these things.
Yeah, I kept hitting the bomb button on accident and throwing bombs out left and right. So I didn't have that much self control with that.
Okay,
but I don't think I used bombs on this boss, on Aquamentus. I think I just ended up kind of dodging his fire and taking strikes at him whenever possible.
Nice. Okay, so that's Aquamentus. We beat him. We get a heart container, and then we go into a room, and we see a big triangle that we go and pick up, and we get a nice little song. Be like, congratulations, you did it. And then it kicks us back out into the dungeon, and we're off to go exploring and go find the next dungeon. Let's go ahead and take a quick break, and when we get back, we will check out Dungeon 2, The Moon. Just a couple quick shout out and thanks before we continue on with the episode. First off, thanks to Haunted for editing this episode, as well as Celeste and Pete for taking the time to go on this amazing journey ahead of us. Also want to give a big thanks to Mikel for use of his music in the show.
Be sure to check out all of his work, including the Zelda and Chill series and other various lo-fi cover soundtracks. Be sure to check the show notes for links to all the work from all those great people that I just mentioned. Anyways, let's get on with the show.
Welcome back. As I said, we are going to go off to Dungeon 2. Now, we did talk about the gathering beforehand. This is where I did more of my gathering, more of my exploring, getting more bombs and going and buying the candle to go and burn some things. It is really nice to be able to use a guide with it because, as Pete had talked about previously, you do have to just sort of guess on a lot of this stuff unless you see a thing that says this is where that it is. And then even if you find it, you could walk in and someone's going to say, "Hey, you broke my door. Pay for the repairs on this thing," and then you just lose money. That's not great.
I don't think I ran into him.
Yeah, if you're using a guide, they won't tell you to go there. Right?
Oh,
Like
okay.
that's the thing.
Gotcha.
It won't tell you to do that because there's no benefit to it. You know,
Okay.
if you're following the Zelda dungeon guide, it's going to say go here to get these rupees, go here. It's never going to say, "Hey, just for fun, do you want to go and lose some rupees?" Because it is kind of funny.
Oh.
Yeah.
And
That's so
out of curiosity, Jeremy, with those, is there actually a door, or is he like under a bush or something?
He's under a bush. Under a bush, or you use your bombs to break up a wall or something like that. It looks just like the others. There's nothing that is different from it. You just walk in and you want to talk to them, and they just say like, "Hey, fix my door," and that's all it is. It's a funny thing, really. That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
We were talking about the shapes of the dungeons as well. Interesting thing is that all of these shapes can interlock together, and the way that the memory in the game worked back then is they only really had two worlds. So you have the overworld that we're exploring, which I believe is a 8x5 grid, I think, something like that. And then also, if you lay all the dungeons out together, it's the same shape. So that's the way they were able to map everything out. And then there are some holes in there, and that's where they have like the cave rooms that you would warp to. So in the memory, that's how they designed a lot of this stuff. So that's the reason they're shaped the way they are. They came up with that, and it's all because they sort of lock into each other. But yeah, so let's just go ahead and jump into the next one, the moon, the dungeon. Now this one is a little bit harder to find. You do have to wrap around a little bit to get into the area, because even if you are looking at a map, it's not just like go here. You have to go north into some space that you haven't seen before. We cut into the desert kind of thing, and go through all that. But yeah, we're also dealing with a lot of difficult enemies. We have the Zoras popping up that are firing things at us. And if you don't have your magic shield, you're not going to be able to block it. But even then, you got to make sure you're facing the right way to block it. So there's a lot going on here.
Oh my goodness. And we're talking about the shapes of the dungeons.
Yes.
Well, while I was going through the guide and I'd see the entrance, like how you said, okay, here's the tree for the first one. Here's this kind of snake Zora looking entrance for the moon. I think I was confused at first because I was expecting the entrances in the actual world to look like the shapes I'm reading about. The eagle, I was expecting an eagle. I was expecting a moon. But then it's the map layout, the block layout.
Oh,
Yeah.
right. Yep.
I don't think I noticed even that the block layout was matching those shapes. So that's good to know that is the connection between those names. I guess I just figured that those were random names that they had selected.
I thought that was going to be like the boss. Like, oh, am I fighting an eagle? Am I fighting the moon?
Yeah.
Yeah. Nope. That's it's just looking at the shapes, and that's why I'm not sure if it was intended by the developers with those names, or if that's something that the fan community had put together on those. But yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Now, in this dungeon here, I'm just now realizing as we skim through it, I did not pick up the item in here. I was going to come in here saying, it's interesting. There's no item in this dungeon. Then as I'm looking through the Zelda dungeon guide, I see that it says like, oh, and you can get the magical boomerang here. And I'm like, the magical what? So I'm going to need to go back next time into this dungeon and go take care of this and get this upgrade.
I might need to do the same. I have the boomerang. I don't know what the magical boomerang does differently though.
It flies longer.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe I
Mhm.
missed that room. I
Mhm.
thought that I had, at least in the second dungeon, searched through every single room, but I know I missed a room or two in the third dungeon.
Yeah, so as it was in the previous dungeon, to get the boomerang, there's a room with a couple enemies that you have to just kill all the enemies in the room, and then it will give you the boomerang. So it's not like the bow where you go down and it's just sitting there for you to pick up. You do have to do that, which we get in like Ocarina will give you, or no, I think Link's Awakening does it when you have the compass. It'll give you a chime to let you know there's an item in there. This doesn't do that. So with getting the
Oh, I
compass
see.
and the map will give you the map. Compass will tell you where you are in the map, but it won't tell you, oh, you still have items left in this area to go get.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
always amazed at have either of you ever actually thrown a boomerang in real life?
I've tried and I've been able to get it to like kind of turn around, but no, not like back to me.
I think I've
No.
done like novelty toy ones that I don't think were actually designed to work.
Right.
Ditto, like little dollar store bow and
Yeah.
arrow or boomerangs. It's kind of like how we joke that different media would have quicksand, and we thought that was going to be a way more common problem in our
Exactly.
lives.
Yeah.
But I thought boomerangs were going to be way more common based on how they're in so many cartoons and video games. But I love the boomerang. I
Mhm.
love it.
Side note, I read an article yesterday about a guy who just got trapped in quicksand for over 24 hours on Valentine's Day and had to be rescued out of it. He had hypothermia and everything. So for him
Where
specifically,
where
it
was
rang true.
this? Was this was
I don't know. Maybe Florida. I think it was
Oh,
Florida.
oh, poor Florida. Can't catch a
Yeah.
break. Poor Florida.
Florida man trapped in quicksand on Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
That sounds about right. So I'm gonna have to go back through here though, because I just totally missed that. We also have a mid boss with Moldorm, which just looks like 4 little fireballs that just goes around, which I remember getting in here and being like, I don't remember this at all. Like what is going on here? This is odd. Like it's in a sand room and there's just these fireballs going around, and all you gotta really do is just hit the tail and just keep hitting the tail. So
Right.
yeah. Any other trouble that we had in here? Any monsters that stuck out that gave you some trouble?
I know they're called ropes, but they look like little cobras.
Yeah.
They're not difficult, but there's a room where there are several of them, and they're not fast, but when they see you or they
Mhm.
detect you, they will charge at you, and you better be ready. And if there are a few really close to you, it can be a little overwhelming.
Yeah. Um Something we also didn't mention before in the previous dungeon and in this dungeon is you'll occasionally find a room that just has an old man in there and he gives you a little hint. In the previous one, it was the easternmost peninsula holds the secret, which really just means go east to get through the dungeon. That's really all that means. In this one, you find a guy and he just goes, "The dongos dislike smoke." So just to give you a hint there, which is really fun. But we get into a room with a single Dodongo that we have to deal with. Now, as someone who knew what to do here, it was 10 seconds and done. Did either of you have a little bit more trouble in there? Or did the guides help you out?
Oh, the guide helped a lot. And I was like, oh, Dodongo, this looks like a Triceratops, kind
Mhm.
of like from Land Before Time or something.
Right.
That's exactly what I thought. As soon as I saw that, I did not immediately associate it with Dodongo. In fact, I thought that the old man's hint was related to something that I would stumble into later in the game. So as soon as I saw the Triceratops, I was like, "Oh, that's an interesting boss design."
Right.
And yeah, I spent I don't know, not an insignificant amount of time just kind of running around that block trying to hit him over and over.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good.
And yeah, it did not work
Yeah.
The timing.
until I read the guide.
Yeah. No, that's great. It's good to get in there and, do something differently than and others
Yeah.
when we're playing through this. Um, yeah, so we finish him off. Like if you so a little secret is that you drop a bomb just right on the Dodongo, and then I believe that will kill him. I believe one bomb placed perfectly will go and just kill him like that. So then we go into another room, we get another Triforce piece, and we are back out in the overworld again. Now at this point, we should have enough hearts to go get the magic sword. So Pete, you said you did dungeon 3 before this, which you definitely would want the magic sword going into the third dungeon. But
So I did dungeon 2 and then 1 and then 3. So the third one was
okay, you still
in
did the
the
third
in
one.
the
Okay.
correct order, fortunately. Or I
Right.
would have,
Okay.
I probably would have spent a pretty considerable amount of time in there trying to figure out what I was doing wrong.
Right. And I did happen to look in on your stream right when you went up to the waterfall where the magic sword was before you had enough hearts for it. And you were like kind of getting frustrated where you were like, give me the sword. And it's just like, nah, the game's being cryptic. It's just like, it says like, come back when you're strong enough to wield this, which just means you have to have enough hearts.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering what I had accomplished in between seeing that message initially, and then I went back and I was able to grab the sword, and I wasn't sure which. I guess it must have been the hearts. Yeah, that makes sense.
Which is a fun thing that they do in Breath of the Wild. You can only actually get the Master Sword once you've collected enough hearts, because when you try to go and pull it, it drains your hearts away. So that's a fun reference that some people that played that maybe didn't even realize. But in the original Legend of Zelda, you would be able to find the swords, but you could only take them when you had enough hearts.
It's
Enough
again.
courage.
Yes.
Oh
There you go.
yeah.
You have to be
Okay.
courageous enough for
Okay.
it.
So impressive how much has
Oh.
stuck through the time in these games. Like I've said.
Does this also remind you guys, if you've ever been to an escape room? I just made the connection as you both were talking. Like, is this the original Zelda? It's almost like an escape room to me.
It's an adventure game, right?
Yeah.
Like in the classic sense of the genre. You have cryptic puzzles that you have to figure out. You also have some that are just push block puzzles, but some of them are you have to find the item and get it to the right person, and you'll find a person that will just go and say, north, south, east, west, west, or something like that. And you have to be like, what does this mean? And then you get to an area and you're like, oh, if I do this, what they said, then that will take me to a secret place. Cool. But yeah, no, it's the classic adventure game with some action, some fighting in there. The genre defining Legend of Zelda. Next dungeon is the as they call the manji, which is I know is a religious symbol or a spiritual symbol or something like that. Unfortunately, it does also remind some people of the Nazi symbol. So just have to call that out, but that's all we're going to say. It's a spiral shape that we have here. Now, this dungeon is quite a bit harder because we are dealing with the dark nuts in this one here. And this is where I will just say I used all my bombs here because that is the easiest way to deal with them. If you use your sword, you can only stab them in the back, which is difficult because they are always moving.
That's right.
Oh my goodness. And how, Pete, when you were saying that you wondered if some of the enemies could sense you, I felt like the dark nuts. It was like a chess piece almost. It's the knight on a chessboard.
Yes.
That's what I thought of with them. They're deliberately moving.
Yeah. I did not realize that the bombs would be so effective on them. And because I had been wasting so many of them, I started over conserving. So I definitely, took swipes at their back until they were gone.
But there's also a room that you will walk into, and it has like 6 or 8 of them, and it slows the game down. And it's like, this was mean. This room is so mean. But fortunately, because there's clusters of them, you can typically do a bunch of damage with a single bomb for multiple enemies on there. This room also then leads us to our item that we get in here, the raft, which is interesting to find in here because it's not like an action item. This is just going to be an exploration item that we'll get later that will let us go to more places. So that's cool.
Yeah, I also love how Link holds things over his head. It's even, I know he's been doing that forever, but it's even cuter seeing Sprite Link hold
Yeah.
items over his head. And it's, and you have to, what is it? Suspension of disbelief, but he's holding a raft and it's the same size as his little body.
As everything else. Yep.
I was curious seeing some places in the water before you end up getting that, and thinking like,
Yeah.
how do you get over there? How do you get to that heart piece that's, 2 blocks into the sea, without being able to jump across? So yeah, that solved the mystery.
Yeah. We also have our first instance of the bubbles in this. Now, if you don't know, that name sounds so much more innocent than what these things are. These are like electrified skulls that bounce around the screen. And if they touch you, they curse you. So when you get hit by those, you temporarily can't use your sword. So it can be very frantic. Sometimes you'll get into this place, and this is also something that has continued on in the Zelda series. Is that when you get bumped by these bubbles, a lot of the times they'll do it where I believe in the maybe in Ocarina. I don't know if Ocarina does, but I think Majora does it. That when you get bumped by them, you change color for a little bit, and you can't use your sword. But yeah, this one can be tough because you'll walk in a room and there's a bunch of enemies. There's these keys bouncing around. There's these gels moving around that even when you kill them, if you don't like really kill them the first time, they turn into little guys that also move around and all that. So you can have your screen filled, and suddenly you get bumped by this skull that makes it you can't even use your sword for a few seconds, and you're just screaming like, "No, what's going on?"
Oh my gosh. Yeah,
Yeah, there are moments of chaos that I would have where I'd walk into a room and be like, how do you even, and I'd have to, fortunately I'd do a save state and walk in and just do it over and over again until I had cleared it. But yeah, I mean, some of these dungeons just overload you with enemies in some of those rooms, and it can be a little intimidating at first.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And imagine playing this without a guide where you have limited resources and you might have used all your bombs or all of your
Yeah.
arrows.
Another thing you bring that up, Celeste. Something else to keep in mind is we weren't getting 6 games a week released back then.
True. This
So
is true.
this game coming out, this would have been like the game that you have for 6 months, right? This is the
Oh,
game
yeah.
that you just you dig around, you get a notepad and you write things down, and you do all that.
Yeah.
There's a
Become
lot.
the expert.
Yeah, there's a lot of games that have tried to go back to that to reference things like that. Something like a Tunic very much tried to bring back that sort of vibe of you get in this world and you don't know what's going on. Cool thing about Tunic is that you collect the instruction booklet, which is very much inspired by the Legend of Zelda instruction booklet. And so you'll get a page that at some point says, "Oh, if you press this button in front of this statue, you can level up your character." And it's like, that's a thing where like you don't know that going in. And same with this, like you just don't know certain things unless you read the booklet, unless you actually sit there and write down notes and figure out all that stuff. So we look back at it now and we're just like, how did people figure this out? But we also know there was you talk about it on the playground, right? You go to school, you talk to your friends about it, you say like, oh, I did this thing here. Did you know you could do that? Then you go home that night and you're like, whoa, I did it. Or you do it and they're just like, they're a liar. Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember my dad having sheets of loose leaf for a lot of games with the password written out, stuck into the box.
Yeah, because these booklets also had blank pages in the back just for notes. They would have these lined pages, just say notes, and you just write your own things in there as well.
Back in the day, a game that I really got hooked on was Fallout 3, and I played it just for hundreds and hundreds of hours and became like kind of and just knew every corner of it, knew the map, knew every building, all that kind of stuff. And I imagine that's kind of what it would have felt like back then to just become like a subject matter expert on the game just by brute forcing familiarization with it, just going every day. You play it over and over again. You write your notes, talk to your friends, and discover every every inch of it. I mean, I still see people. I was looking up conversations about the game, and I still see people saying, "I still hunt for secrets in it. I still walk around and plant bombs in random places." just out of that desire to find squeeze one last secret out of the game.
That's
And
great.
that, like, modern games just don't have that. You don't feel like there's that. And of course, there are Easter eggs, all that kind of stuff, but you don't feel that there are decades worth of exploration still to be done.
Yeah, like you said, modern games will have one big secret to find.
Yeah.
Right. And then the community will find it within the first week. And then it's just
Yeah.
there, right? And it's, something like that.
Goes into a YouTube video, and yep, we check that off, and there it is.
Right.
Yeah, I hope you have to avoid the internet for a little while.
Yeah. I think, internet is great about that. But then sometimes if you're on like social media, you'll just scroll and it'll be like, did you know this thing about Zelda? And then just like flat out tells you the thing. And it's like, that's not fun.
Yeah.
But
Wish I had the chance to discover that myself.
Right, exactly. So this dungeon, we get through there. We survive this dungeon with all the dark nuts and all the enemies trying to stop us. And we find a room with Manhandla, which is a plant creature that we see many, many times in later Zelda games. But this is another boss that with one well-timed bomb, you can have him done in like 5 seconds.
Hey, I'm gonna have to start using these bombs more.
Oh yeah, I was following the guide, and I thought Manhandla sounded familiar. Where do you remember the games that it's in?
Manhandla is also in Minish Cap. Manhandla is
Okay.
in Hyrule Warriors. I'm trying to think if Manhandla was in Link's Awakening or one of the Oracle games. It's mostly in the 2D ones. I don't think there's been in a sense there are versions of them in the 3Ds that are very referential to Manhandla, but I always viewed the what is the jellyfish in Jabu Jabu, the
Oh.
boss on there.
Oh my gosh, it's on the tip of my tongue. Oh,
I think it was
it's
a
like,
menace.
It reminded me of Manhandla in a way because it's sort of
Okay.
you have the core with the things coming out of it or whatever. But Manhandla has been in like a handful of other games, not as recurring as like Goma. Goma is probably the most recurring boss in Zelda, but Manhandla has been in a few other Zelda games.
okay.
Has it always looked somewhat like a biblically accurate angel?
It does look like a biblically accurate angel, doesn't it?
Yeah, like especially in the drawings for it for sure. But
Baronade.
Yeah, so maybe not, but in my mind, I always sort of put those things hand in hand. Where I was like, they must have taken inspiration from them.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
No, definitely like the Deku Babas. Those definitely were inspired by this design of having the big face on the plant kind of thing. But yeah, if like I said, you do one good bomb and he's done. But Pete, did you have some trouble with this one?
Not a lengthy amount. I mean, it took me a little bit to get through them. I didn't use any bombs, so I was just hacking away at it and chopping pieces off piece by piece. I think you have to eliminate all 4 corners of it essentially. So yeah, it took me a little bit. I don't think I went into any boss fight and had kind of a clean first try. I had to try a handful of times to take it down. But yeah, I like that experience a little bit of kind of learning what the boss is going to throw at me and adjusting to it. But now I would definitely, if I was going back through it, I would definitely say, I've already beat you the way I was supposed to. So you're going to get a bomb and that's going to be that.
Yeah, I would say my advice is that when you go into these bosses that like if you're having trouble with it, do it your way. And then if you die, do your quick save thing and then go in and just be like, all right, I'm going to try bombs on you. Let's just see what this does.
Yeah, choose it. Yeah.
But Celeste, what about you?
No, I mean, I am following this guide, and I think the most challenging part is how Manhandla gets a little bit faster as it loses the appendages, heads. So that can be a little challenging. But of course, if I die, I rewind, and I'm like, okay, I'm not bad. I will say in the dungeons in general, though, did either of you maybe not Jeremy, but when you first enter and there are all these little statues, were you worried that they were going to attack you? They look like tiny dragons or tiny fish, even though they don't do anything. Were you hesitant at first?
Yes. There other similar statues somewhere that shoot flames at you. I was
Yes.
a little paranoid, I guess, like walking in initially thinking, oh, this might be one of those circumstances. I thought I had run into that at some point.
Yes, there are rooms that I believe typically you'll find them in like the four corners, that as you're standing there, if you're in the room long enough, you'll suddenly see them shoot a fireball at you.
Okay.
So that is a thing, but rest assured, the entrance of every single dungeon on here is actually a safe space.
Honestly, I'll
Oh.
take occasional fireballs any day over I think I incorrectly called them Octoroks in our intro episode, but the Zora that come out of the sea and shoot those little energy balls at you. Those things are a menace. Those are my worst enemy. They were getting me left and right.
Yes, they're fast and they're constant.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
All right. Anything else that we want to add before we wrap this episode up?
I just appreciate how you have to take your time with this game. It really forces you to not just run in and necessarily start attacking things. You have to have a strategy for a lot of these enemies.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's great. It's great. Love this game. So happy to be back talking about this.
Yeah, it's been a great time kind of learning it and discovering it. And I definitely see why it is such a legendary game that has stood the test of time. I mean, they nailed the design immediately and they've been able to use it across the series. So super impressive seeing the origins of Legend of Zelda.
Absolutely.
And the opening to this game, the just epic opening to the screen.
Yes. You get that beautiful waterfall and all this stuff. And yeah, it's great. It's great. So that'll wrap up this episode. For our next episode, we're going to be completing another 3 dungeons. So looking at level 4, the snake, level 5, the lizard, and level 6, the dragon. So now that you have your raft, we can go to more places. We can bomb some more things, find some more items, get some more heart upgrades, get stronger, get another sword, and complete those dungeons, get your pieces, and then be back here, and we'll talk about it on Chat of the Wild.